thing? Okay, so my name is Sylvia. This is my solo show for the work I did with my residency here at Akron Soul Train. The title of this exhibit is the Book of Akron 330. What I did, well, the way I describe it is I retold Bible stories within a modern day Akron context to show how the Bible can and is still relevant if that's what you believe in. My goal of this exhibit is not necessarily to convert anyone, but just to get people to reevaluate what their moral compass is and why. And just to kind of revisit like what parts of their moral compass have been here for thousands of years and how they might adjust it to work with our contemporary lives. So, as an example, this one is called The Curse of Ham, and I did one-page story for each piece. Obviously, I'm not going to read the story word for word right now, but The Curse of Ham is, in the Bible, it is the story of Noah's son. Noah got drunk one day, and his son Ham came in and seen him drunk. He was naked, and instead of like covering him up and protecting his dad's dignity, he went out and got his brothers and like laughed at their dad. So his brothers came in, and they said they like prevented themselves from even looking at their dad, basically protecting his dignity, and then covered him up. So when Noah came to, he basically said, Ham, you'll be cursed forever because you didn't protect my dignity, but my other sons did. So in this story that I told, this man, he is getting off the bus on Copley Road in front of Mr. Pantry, and he's like very smitten with the bus driver. So in his moment of flirting with her, he falls off the bus, lands on his face, and then this young man sees the whole thing and pulls out his phone to record it. So the guy is just like absolutely upset. He's cussing at him, telling him like, you know, people have no dignity, no respect anymore. And with this young man, he posts the video on TikTok. He gets a lot of views and traction to his page, which he enjoys for a little while. But the negative energy that comes with those views and that traffic eventually really throws him into depression, which affects his relationship with his son, and then his son with his son, and so on and so forth. Basically showing how one moment could have like a butterfly effect to create a curse in a family. In the same way that with the Bible, how it's written, you know, one person can just curse someone else. This is showing how we can curse ourselves based on our actions. So on the flip side, the bus driver gets out and helps him, and she doesn't know, but this guy is set up to get like a trust fund soon, and then they live happily ever after, showing that a moment of kindness can relay to a lifetime of generations of wealth and abundance, as opposed to mental illness and sadness. Yes. So that's how I kind of took something that happened in the Old Testament, the curse of Ham, and retold it in a modern setting of this is how today it's still happening in different ways. You know, maybe we're not finding our dads naked and drunk in a tent. Maybe some of us are, but either way, if we don't protect people's dignities, that's how it can kind of snowball and lead to a curse. Okay, so this is Adam and Eve. The scripture that I focused on is the moment in the garden after they had ate the apple, and they had this awareness that they were naked and needed to cover themselves, and they had like shame, basically. So in this story, these two people, they're like best friends because their parents were best friends. And their parents are like these like real distrustful kind of conspiracy theorist people, and they don't trust anything. So as they're growing up, they're not allowed to have access to a lot of things because their parents are like very conservative and protective of children. So one of the things that really bothers the main character, Natasha, is she really wants to see scary movies, and she lives here in Akron, Ohio. So every year when we have our Halloween, she sees all the, the decorations and everything surrounding Halloween, but she's not allowed to watch scary movies because her parents believe that it corrupts children's minds, basically. So she grows up always wanting it, never having it. It's her 18th birthday, and they find out that at the Highland Square Theater, they're playing The Exorcist, a classic horror film. So she takes her best friend Glenn with her to go see this movie, The Exorcist. And they're so excited, they're really pumped. They go to see it, and then when they are leaving, they're like both terribly disturbed. Like they cannot believe what they just watched, but they don't want to say that because they hyped it up for themselves, so they have to act like they like it still. So as they're leaving, they see this young girl. She's in like a blue nightgown, and she's just like frowning. She's not saying anything. She's in house shoes. And instead of like reaching out and being like, hey kid, where are your parents? Are you okay? They both like remember another little girl they just seen get possessed by a demon. And so this side of this young girl creeps them out, and they just start like power walking away. And as they're power walking away, Natasha realizes that her awareness of her world has changed so much just from this one movie, to the point of she had no compassion and concern for a child because she just watched a child in a very awful way, basically. So just like how Adam and Eve suddenly had that awareness and were ashamed of themselves and covered themselves, they kind of had that sudden shame, like, we're awful. We just deserted abandoned little girl, and we to this moment don't know if she's okay. So yeah, that is a modern day version. I don't think that of my normal belief. I don't think that we should totally avoid horror films, but I do think we all should be more mindful of what we're taking in and how it could be perverting our view of things. It's a lot of like associations we have that maybe we would have went about certain experiences totally different if it wasn't for those associations. Yep.
Oh, that's 100%.
Yeah.
Right on. It really is.
Yeah. And so to me, that's kind of like the forbidden fruit of our modern world. Things that they're very tempting for us. They look fun, they look tasteful, but in the end, they just sway us a certain mindset that's not healthy. This is Noah's Ark. I actually pulled a scripture though from the part not where the story of Noah's Ark usually is in like Genesis. I pulled it from Matthew. The part that I pulled from, it was referring back to the times of Noah's Ark in reference to how leading right up to the point of him making it and taking off, people were still marrying and drinking and partying as normal, and they knew nothing of how everything was about to change right up until the flood came and they died. So this is saying it kind of like a reference back, saying, when the Son of Man, or when Jesus or Christ returns, it'll be the same thing. People will still be partying and drinking and living life as normal until they realize they can't, and it's not that anymore. So that's the scripture I chose to pull from, because I think that scripture kind of brings up a Genesis story to the modern day in itself already. Like it's saying, the future, I guess. It's saying like this will be a repeat. So since my story is kind of a modern day repeat, I thought I wanted to use that scripture. But the model for this painting is my brother Joe. He actually, during the day, he works at a water treatment plant. So he's very connected to nature and cares about our earth and everything. And he tells me so much about like our water that I just would have never known otherwise. So I knew like, yeah, he has to be the model for Noah's Ark because of how I retold it. So in the story, what did I name him? Sorry, I don't remember, but Turner, of course. I based a lot of people off of their middle names in real life. So his middle name is Turner, so his character was Turner. In the story, he works at like a national park in Cleveland, and a part of his job is to go out and take the water temperature every day for stats and data. So he goes out one day, and at a time where like the water is supposed to only be like 78 degrees at the highest, it's reading as 81 degrees. So some people might not see that as like a huge difference, but with aquatic wildlife, from what I've read, small differences in temperatures when you in these huge bodies of water represent like really big changes. So when he sees 81 degrees, he kind of panics, but he keeps it together. He goes back to base, and he finds out people everywhere are getting these really high readings. So this is something in the real world. I'm not an environmental expert, but I know this is something that's happening with global warming. So normally with global warming, as the world heats up, the only thing that can like combat that is our waters, our big bodies of water, and they'll absorb temperatures. And they're so massive that normally their temperature won't rise for a long time because it's so much mass there to, you know, absorb the heat. But it's like the waters can only absorb so much. So once they absorb all they can, both the lakes and the oceans, then it'll be nothing at all kind of combating our global warming. So when he reads this temperature of 81 degrees, it's one of those moments where it's like Lake Erie is heating up. This is a moment, this matters. So he goes back to base, everyone else getting the same readings. They send notices to all the media companies, and they're just like stressing. So that night he goes to his favorite bar, Main Street Saloon, to kind of just like check out mentally because he's all stressed. And he's waiting on the news to show any notice of this. And the only thing on the news is news of like celebrities marrying, and people are still going about life as normal. So basically nothing changes. And so he goes out to the water the next day to take another water temperature reading, and now it's at 83 degrees. So he just is finally like, I gotta prepare for a world that basically none of us can prepare for. Originally, when I had this story in mind, it's kind of a funny side note. When I was a kid and I would like do Bible study, I remember so many like kids storybooks talking about like other people laughing at Noah for building a boat in the middle of the desert. But I learned that it never had that in the Bible. So that's the scripture I wanted to use, but that scripture doesn't exist. So yeah. So it was interesting when I learned that, because I'm like, I guess that was just whoever made those kid Bible books, that was their way of connecting with children. And children understand bullying and getting laughed at. So to get children to connect, they're like, yeah, Noah was laughed at, I guess. But yeah, so that is Noah's Ark, my retelling of it. Yeah. So this is called A Day's Notice. It's based on Proverbs 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. So this girl, she has a coworker who they visited the Akron Art Museum one day as like a company outing, and her older coworker tried to make her feel like unpolished or uncultured because she had never been to Paris before, and her older coworker did. So she goes on this whole mission to kind of rectify her reputation in the office and make her older coworker feel like she was the uncultured one. So she comes up with this whole plan to go to Paris, and leading up to it, she like brags and boasts about everything she's gonna do. She like researches her coworker's visit to Paris to find out things she didn't do to make her feel bad about it, all this stuff. And then it's the day of, it's her birthday. She goes to the airport, she's ready to go, and then when she gets there, it's March 15th, 2020. Everything is shutting down for COVID. So she had this whole trip, and then she couldn't go. Of course, flights to Paris didn't open for another 2 years. So in that 2 years, she would just go to the Akron Art Museum garden and just think about how like foolish she felt basically for boasting and bragging about this trip that she didn't even go on yet. But where I got this story from, it didn't quite happen exactly the same. My sister, for her 21st birthday, she has me and our older sister. We had been waiting her 21st birthday for years, couldn't wait to go celebrate, and we love Pittsburgh. So her birthday is on 3/16, so we went there the night of 3/15, and the whole city of Pittsburgh shut down. Like when we left Akron, everything was still open, and then by the time we got there, it was like nothing. So the hotel we stayed at found out about it, and they like in secret opened their bar just for us because they felt bad she couldn't celebrate her birthday, but they kind of broke the law, but who cares, you know, whatever. But it was just so crazy because then we never officially got to celebrate her 21st birthday properly for like at least another almost 2 years. Wow. But the reason I did the whole painting blue except her skin is during COVID, I worked at a couple nursing homes as like a door screener. And especially at the beginning of the pandemic when we didn't really know anything and we just like covered ourselves in PPE, I had this weird moment, and I was like sitting in the foyer area of a nursing home to take people's temperatures and their readings before they went in, and I had on like a blue gown with blue booties and a blue mask and a blue face shield and a blue hairnet and blue gloves because we were ridiculous, right? And the table I was at had like a blue covering over it. I had a blue pen in my hand, and I was like laughing, and right when I was laughing, no lie, this blue jay came and flew and sat right in front of the door. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like the only thing I could see blue, that wasn't blue was my like skin. So wow. I took that personal experience from COVID and put it into this painting. So this one is called Jesus Feeds 5,000, and in the Bible, that story, Jesus and his disciples, they come upon a group of very hungry mother and children and men, and his disciples are trying to tell him, we don't have anything to feed these people, we have to keep moving. So Jesus, because he's Jesus, he says, give me what you can, and all the disciples can come up with is 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish is all they can find for Jesus. So he takes those, he gives prayer, and then he manages to feed all 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So obviously this is like a Jesus miracle in the Bible, but my story is about a woman named Gloria. She was a teen mom in Akron, Ohio. The father of her child was not there. At first her mom was able to help her, but then her mom passed away when the boy was only 3 years old. She goes through a lot of the normal trials and tribulation of a teen mom, a single teen mom, and then at one point she realized she needed to go extend help for people who can help her. So she had a family friend take her son for a little while she established herself. But she never stopped working. She always worked multiple jobs at any given time. And when she made that sacrifice of allowing her child to go live with a family friend, he was able to get involved with sports from that move. He got really interested in sports. From then on, Gloria, she did everything she could to support her child through sports. He went on to go to St. Mary's High School and become the #1 athlete in the country. And then he was drafted into the NBA directly out of high school. And then he goes on to be very successful. But the Full Moment Circle is him and his mom create this foundation that gives, at this point, millions of dollars to needy families for housing, food, school, all types of various services. So, she started off, she was given only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, but she eventually molded a whole other human being that fed millions to his community. So, yeah.
That's worth the tearjerker, right?
Yeah.
Because you never really look at it like that.
Yes. And you can still hear me, right? I think what's really awesome about it too is the son, as he gets older and he's famous in sports, he always refers back to his mom and how awesome she was, and that's his heroine, while he's the hero for so many people in their story and their lives. So that's where it started, is here in Akron, Ohio, and that's where it went. This is Lot's wife. In Genesis, Lot and his wife, they lived in this awful place. Is it Sodom and Gomorrah? Sodom and Gomorrah. And basically they were rescued from this place. The whole rest of the town was corrupt and awful, and they were the only 2 good people left. So God saved them. He had 2 angels walk them out of the city, and the only instruction he gave them was, whatever you do, don't look back. Just keep going where you're guided to. But at one point, Lot's wife, she looked back, and because she looked back, she became a pillar of salt. So this story always resonated with me because I just didn't get it. I'm like, why would someone turn to a pillar of salt for just looking back? And I think it's many ways you can take that story, but basically the way that I took it is that it is, you risk a lot looking back at past chapters of your life with nostalgia. Doing that too much, it forces you to live in the past. So the story behind this painting is this girl, she gets accepted to Akron U, but the only way she'll be able to go is if she gets a full ride scholarship. So she gets the scholarship, and at the time she's really living a poor lifestyle with her best friend. They're doing a lot of crime and scamming and stuff like that. So when she gets the acceptance letter, she knows she's going to have to stop that lifestyle. But because she's going to miss it, she basically decides to do one last run with her best friend of a crime, and she convinces herself it's so that she can get money for books, but it's really because she just is kind of panicking that she's not going to live that life anymore. So of course they go on this last run and they get arrested, and her whole world of possibilities she had from that scholarship is then ended because she essentially looked back. She looked back on her old life and wanted one last taste of it. So yeah, that's my interpretation of why Lot's wife would turn to salt, is because she wasn't trusting her journey to just face forward and go forward and look back.
Yep.
Yep.